on this day 40 of Israel's war with Hamas. The UN says it's appalled by an ongoing IDF operation inside the Shifa hospital in Gaza City. The Red Cross and the World Health Organization say they're deeply concerned. This hospital has been identified as a Hamas command center by Israel, a claim supported by the United States. You're looking at footage of a firefight between Hamas terrorists and IDF troops at the entrance to the hospital. Shots being fired from inside the hospital. Well, the IDF has also released this footage showing its troops bringing humanitarian aid to Shifa. The IDF says it is mounting a precise and targeted operation against Hamas in a specified area within the hospital, searching for Hamas infrastructure and weapons. Let's get the very latest on that now. We can go to southern Israel. We're joined by our correspondent Pierre Clochendler. Pierre, what is the latest?
Well, an official security source told I-24 News that there are no battles inside that specified location on the western side of the compound of Shifa Hospital. No battle, but the soldiers are combing the area room after room, floor after floor, in order to find weapons caches and Hamas assets. That's the terminology that they employ, Hamas assets. And it seems they found some of the weapons, some of those assets, but no traces of the hostages, and they're still looking for it. Now, another security source, Israeli security source, said earlier that if need be, this targeted operation will be expanded to other buildings in the compound. This is a very large compound. It's one of the, probably the largest hospital in the whole Gaza Strip. So because they're working surgically, so to speak, and combing the area, that will take time. And it's, in a sense, a mirror image of the whole ground offensive during which the IDF forces progressed very carefully in a very measured way in order to save IDF soldiers' lives, and also in order to prevent too many non-involved population casualties. So at the hospital, which is really a symbol of the humanitarian predicament of the Palestinians, they're taking really a lot of precautions in order not to have any casualties. There are probably something like 500 medical personnel inside the hospital, 1,000 to 1,500 displaced Palestinians that seek refuge in the hospital compound, as well as about 650 patients. Amongst them, 37 premature newborns who desperately need incubator because Egypt is undertaking an effort to transfer those babies to Egyptian territory, and thus these incubators will be very, very important for the babies to stay alive and be sent to Egypt, to a safe haven. Apart from that, there is still heavy bombing in the northern part of the Gaza Strip, but there are humanitarian pauses at the same time. In two of the Jabalia refugee camp quarters, As-Salam and Al-Nur, there are humanitarian pauses from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. in an hour from now. The same humanitarian corridor, Salah ad-Din axis, crossing east of Gaza City towards the south, is open for 7 hours from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And the residents of many of Gaza City are urged by the IDF and by the coordinator of activities vis-à-vis the Palestinians to leave the areas where they live and to join the cohort of displaced Palestinians that are looking for a safe haven in the south.
All right, Pierre, thank you very much indeed. Pierre Clochendler there with the very latest on what is happening inside Gaza this hour. With me in the studio, Colonel Grisha Yakubovich is the former head of the civilian department at Kogat. He's an expert in Israeli-Palestinian relations as well. Thank you very much for being with us, Grisha. Good to see you again. So all of the action today very much centred on the Shifa hospital, which the IDF has repeatedly identified as a Hamas command centre. But this is a very complicated, sensitive operation given the number of civilians who are still inside.
You know, I was trying to seek the right word, how to define it, and I found it, okay? It's incomprehensible. That's the right word. Just imagine, what would any other country, what would any other army do when 239 civilians will be kidnapped? Let's say it's their fathers, their mothers, their sons, their daughters that the enemy would kidnap. After brutally murdering 1,400, at that massacre, holding them underground in Gaza. The IDF is entering and fighting terror. Well, it's their known arena, it's their home, so they are familiar with I would say, the obstacles on the ground. And, you know, the IDF should be prepared with surprises. So instead of being focused only as an army operationally, instead of being focused only on the operational needs, strategy, tactics, the IDF is dealing with fighting the enemy, sending aid, talking to people, sending warnings, walking tiptoes on eggs. You know, it's a fragile war. That's how I will define it. And it's incomprehensible to do things like that in a battle zone. It's a war that we are facing, okay? It's a brutal enemy that we are trying to eliminate and to release our civilians. And yet, because of this unfortunate reality of the state of Israel, that we suffer from delegitimacy from all over the world, and people do not understand, I believe, the reality, not all of them, some of them. We need to do all those things. And it's like, you know, dancing between drops of rockets, if I would say so.
Well, let's hear it from a Palestinian himself, because the Al Jazeera network on its Arab channel did a live interview inside one of the hospitals with a Palestinian man. You can take a listen to that now.
وبعدين بالنسبه للمقاومه اللي بتيجي بتخبى بين الناس، ليش تخبى بين الناس؟ يروح في جهنم يتخبى.
يعني هذه شهادات من المواطنين بسبب يعني
As he was referring to Hamas. He called them the resistance, which is the translation of Hamas. So there we hear it from the Palestinians themselves. They know that Hamas embeds itself within the civilian infrastructure. It's not the case for the UN humanitarian chief Martin Griffiths, tweeting this morning that he's appalled by the operation inside Shifa. The Red Cross, the World Health Organization have also condemned Israel for what's going on there. The United States, though it has to be said, and also the EU has accepted that Hamas does use hospitals as a place to base their operations.
Well, I know Shifa personally. I've been there. I've been there in my past, in my past career. I helped them even to build the hospital, some of the buildings, so I know it well. Many places, many departments. And yes, during the years of my service at the IDF, we always dealt with this. We've been getting this intelligence, this information that Hamas are building their headquarters underneath hospitals, and especially Shifa. And it's not something new. And it's like, you know, the feeling is that we need to justify our credibility again and again and again. And even after only yesterday or 2 days ago, the IDF spokesman personally entered Turantisi hospital, and the whole world saw that they are using the hospital as a military, okay, base or a base of operations. So what else do we need to prove to the world?
Well, do you think that the IDF is doing enough to get the information out to the world? We saw, of course, yesterday, or the night before yesterday, the IDF spokesman Daniel Hagari went in with cameras underground to the Rantisi hospital, which Israel now controls, showing not only weapons, but also possibly evidence of where the hostages were held.
Well, the problem is with the reality that the IDF or the government of Israel faces. Okay, now let's look at it from an operational perspective. Okay, just let's go back. We announced to the management of Shifa that we are about to surround them. We announced them yesterday that we are about to enter. Okay, so what do you think that Hamas would do if they know that the goal, that the mission of the IDF is to surround Shifa, to enter? I'm sure that they, for the last 2 weeks, they cleaned whatever they could clean underground. Number two, there are certain informations that I believe the IDF can share. And some of the information you cannot share because then you will expose your sources. So it's a built-in dilemma. So on one hand, you want to show everybody the truth and the reality. On the other hand, if you do some of those things, you will expose yourself.
Are you encouraged by the fact Egypt is now offering to help with the evacuation of some of the patients and the babies inside the hospital?
It's not in Egypt. There's another country. I think Dubai also sent in a field hospital. Qatar is also sending in. Qatar is also sending in a field hospital. They understand pragmatically that eventually the IDF will enter, the patients will leave, the IDF will have to fight with Hamas. We will need to release the people who were kidnapped, and the patients will be treated on field hospitals. As simple as it is.
So this will be a long and complicated battle. How long do you think it might?
Of course, it's going to be long. Only in Shifa or the?
Just in Shifa.
I believe it's going to take at least a week and a half.
It's a huge compound, you say?
Yeah, it's a huge compound, of course. Let's not forget the information that the IDF holds, that are 5 stores on the ground. So it's quite a large one. This is the major headquarters.
The IDF already has detailed information about the tunnels underneath, about the plan of the building, etc.
Well, there was a previous operation before the IDF surrounded the Shifa. Let's not forget, there is around Shifa, there is some sort of a dahya, if I may use this term from Lebanon. So all the neighborhood around Shifa was a neighborhood full of headquarters. So the IDF entered for the last 2 weeks and cleaned, okay, all those places, many tunnels. Now, when you hear sometimes that there is explosives and they sound like a belt, or you see it like a belt, it's to make sure that the tunnels that connect the areas that you want to enter are collapsing, so they will not be able to smuggle the thing that they want to smuggle. So it's an operation that started, I believe, 3 weeks ago, okay, the moment the IDF entered, in a purpose, okay, or in advance, knowing that that will be the situation.
Talk to me about the humanitarian corridors that Israel has been supervising and overseeing for 3 or 4 hours daily. They've been kind of guarding a route so that civilians in northern Gaza can move south. It started with a trickle, didn't it?
In some places it's 4 hours, in some places it's 8 hours and 6 hours. Okay?
But it started with just a few dozen people. It
started at the beginning. At the beginning, when the IDF entered to Gaza. It started with few dozens, okay, not more than that, that had to cross on the major road. It's called Salah ad-Din road, okay? Or if I will connect it to Israel, it's road number 4. It's the same road, okay? That is from Nahariya and down to El Arish, okay? Crossing the Gaza Strip. It's called Salah ad-Din. And there's a junction there that we used to name it Nesarim Junction. A little bit to the north, this is actually the place or the line that the people were supposed, or they've been asked to cross from the north to the south, so the IDF will minimize casualties or civilians were not involved. At the beginning, of course, not many crossed because Hamas targeted them. Hamas launched mortar shells on those people. I've seen a video of Hamas snipers killing some of those civilians, kids and women. And only after the IDF took control over that junction and control over that road, only then people felt secure enough or that they will be safe enough to cross, because they know that the IDF will not open fire on them.
So do you think that's the situation for people inside the hospital now, that some of them just will be too scared to leave?
This is what is happening right now. Actually, the IDF is freeing the people that were obligated to, I don't know, maybe it was their will, or Hamas forced them to stay in Shifa, so they will be their human shield. And what the IDF is doing now is entering from room to room and forcing those people, the civilians, okay, to leave Shifa to the south.
All right, Grisha, thank you. Stay with us. We're going to go to the north now, because Israel, of course, remains watchful and on high alert at its northern border amid the threat from Iranian the Iranian-backed terrorist group Hezbollah. Our Pia Steckelbach is there for us now. Pia, what's happening?
Well, Laura, it has been a relatively quiet last 24 hours, as quiet as it can be in the current situation here at the Israel-Lebanon border. Very tense, very volatile situation. However, we do know that there are reports of Israeli shelling in some communities on the southern Lebanese side of the border there, the communities of Ayat Tashab and Yarin, which are located at the center west part of the Israel-Lebanon border on the Lebanese side there. We've heard some of that shelling earlier today as well. When it comes to the constant shelling coming from southern Lebanon, mortar shells and anti-tank missiles, there were several of them launched towards the Israeli communities of Margaliot and Metula in the upper eastern part of the Galilee region yesterday, as well as Arab al-Ramshe, which again is more towards the center western part of the Israel-Lebanese border. And these are threats that are constantly in place here. We're speaking about dozens of communities that have been evacuated exactly because of that. And this issue has to be addressed also on the level of politics as well. And this is what we've been seeing yesterday, both the defense minister addressing that in his speech, but also Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been speaking to local and municipal leaders here in the north yesterday, and also Benny Gantz, the leader of the National Unity Party and the current member of the War Cabinet and the former defense minister. He toured the communities of Kiryat Shmona and Metula yesterday, and he said that the mission is to restore security here in the north as well, and that the country cannot go back to a situation that has been in place on October the 6th, the day before the breakout of the current war. But the issue is there is no current suggestions in terms of how that can be translated, or if that will be translated into military action. But we do know that thousands of people here in the north have been evacuated without knowing when they will be able to go back to their homes. And we know that many of them are fearful to do so because the threat that Hezbollah poses sitting right on the Israel-Lebanon border is going to be there even after the war with Gaza is going to end. And this is a threat that has been there also way before. And this has been something that these residents here had to take into account also before. And many of them now demand that there will be some kind of military action against Hezbollah there on the border. If that will be the case, and what exactly is going to be done in order to restore that security here on the northern front, that is a big question mark right now, Laura.